Benvenuti a tutti, and welcome to another edition of Italian America Long Island. My name is Dave Anthony Setadicati. Many Italian Americans, especially of our generation, have gotten into following their ancestors and looking into where they came from. On tonight's show, we have two very good friends of mine who have done a marvelous job traveling to Italy and researching their ancestry and finding out all kinds of things about their own relatives. So please welcome Tom and Vivian Papa. Tom, great
Thanks,
to have
Dave.
you.
Great to be
Vivian,
here. Appreciate it.
This is going to be so wonderful.
Thank you,
So,
Dave.
how did you actually get started looking into your ancestry? Because when you're young, it doesn't really matter to you. But as you get older, something triggers that. And what was it for you?
Well, initially, it was not me that looked into our ancestry. It was my parents and my sister. And this goes back to 1979, and they were going on a trip to Italy. They knew of relatives in Sicily, and they looked them up, and luckily they connected. And that was 40 years ago, and ever since then, we've been in touch with my cousins in Sicily and have grown closer over the years with them.
Now, prior to that trip, did they just knew of them, but they didn't have any contact with them?
There were letters back and
Oh, there were.
forth, Christmas cards, some correspondence, but with communication the way that it was years ago, that was all that there was, just some written correspondence over the years. But over the last 40 years, it's gotten easier to correspond, and we've gotten closer with these relatives since that time, especially because my sister speaks the language and is also of a similar age to the cousins that we've been in touch with, and she's gotten extremely close with one in particular, and they speak weekly now. And we're very, very blessed and lucky to have this relationship now. And we see them regularly. We've gone to their children's weddings. They've come to the United States, and we just have a wonderful relationship.
Now, Tom, this trip that Vivian's family took, that was an inspiration to you also?
After that trip, in, 2000, I think, we all went to Italy as a family to visit them. So we brought not just myself and my wife, but also our kids, our relatives, our cousins. We all went. So there were 13 or 14 of us that all visited Italy that time. That's the first time I met her family. And that was my inspiration. When I saw the love that these people set forth for basically strangers, I had never met them. And even with a little bit of a language barrier, they couldn't do enough for you. And that gave me an inspiration to say, this is really something. I wonder if somewhere in Italy I have relatives like this that I just don't know existed. So that was my inspiration to start digging into and trying to find basically family on my side in Italy.
Right, so you both have that, and you're both born in the United States, and you're second generation Americans.
Yes.
Right? So where did your grandfather actually come from?
It's my grandmother's line of the
Oh, your
family.
grandmother's line.
It's my mother's family.
Okay.
And the family name is Marcianti.
Yeah.
And they're from a town called Bavona, which is in southwestern Sicily. So it's inland, it's in the mountains of southwestern Sicily.
In the southwestern, but your family is from a different part of Italy.
Right, they're in mainland Italy, in Puglia, and it's a small mountain village called Accadia. The population, last time they checked, basically, I think it was 2016, it was like under 2,400 people in the town.
Accadia.
It's a very, very small town, mountain village in Accadia.
Okay, but now this connection that started actually a long time ago because of the correspondence, and I know your family had a lot of correspondence. Why don't you tell us about the correspondence that came from your Italian relatives or to America, or from is it your grandfather that was corresponding?
Right, my grandfather, my cousin had given me a folder of some memorabilia, if you want to call it that, at that time. And it was some postcards that my grandfather had written to relatives in Nipote, so we had a nephew in Italy, and a few pictures. Really didn't know that much about any of it, because when my grandfather came, and we always thought he originally came from Naples because the ship came from Naples, and that's where it said he was from. But my cousin then straightened that out. She said, no, they came from a town called Acadia. And he came over at the age of 18, and then eventually he brought over his brother Gennaro and his sister Rose. And I thought that that was really the family that was there. And so these other people I thought were probably a little further removed. But once I actually went and visited and found out, evidently it was much closer than I thought.
So I understand he had a brother that was still in Italy. And this was the brother he was corresponding with, or?
Yes, and mostly actually with his brother's wife. I guess she was the writer, because I have many letters from
I'd love to
Filipino.
see the letters. Can you show
But-
let's show the audience some of these beautiful letters you have. These are wonderful, Tom.
Can I mention something about the letters? There were some letters that were in New York that came from the family in Italy, but all of these letters were actually in Italy. And when we reconnected with Tom's family this past spring, all of these letters surfaced, and they were in the possession of his cousin that we met in Italy, and they had saved all of these letters from Tom's grandfather that were sent to Italy, and they were kept all of these years.
So this is your grandfather's
This is my
hand.
grandfather's writing. We knew that we always loved getting Christmas cards from him just to see the envelope and the writing on it.
It
But
is
he was-
absolutely a work of art.
and even prior to receiving these letters, which was wonderful, you know, he had written speeches, and this my cousin had given me. This is my cousin here in the United States before I even knew about the cousins in Italy. But this is a speech he wrote. He would always do speeches at the table at Christmas, at whatever. But this was a New Year's speech that he had written, and just to see the writing here is really special. But it just talks about, you know, the health, and thank God that we're all healthy and that we come together as a family and we're trying to build a better life, and it's interesting, but you know, obviously it's a lot to go through right now. But it's just beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful. That's a document. I mean, that's like the Magna Carta or something. It's so beautifully written. Were you close with your grandfather?
You know, when I was growing up, we lived out here on Long Island, and the Long Island life was like Long Island life is. But when we would go to Brooklyn to visit my grandparents in Bensonhurst, in those days it was like going to Little Italy. You go around to the corner store, everybody spoke Italian. I didn't understand it, but I heard it. If you went to, they had the social club where they all played poker, and they just all go there, and we'd sit in the corner playing whatever, bingo or whatever, but all the men were there drinking their wine, playing cards, and speaking Italian. And the whole neighborhood was Italian. Really, you didn't need to speak English in that neighborhood, and my Aunt Rose never did learn English. So when we visited her, it was just, she didn't know what we were saying, we didn't know what she was saying.
Right.
But
So did you and your father speak Italian in your home? Or?
my father was funny in that respect, because he really wanted to Americanize himself as much as possible. So he never spoke Italian unless we went to an Italian restaurant. When we went to an Italian restaurant, with the waiters and the staff and all, he'd speak Italian. Of course, they give you better service and all of that. So we would hear him speak Italian, but that was the only time.
Yeah.
And even when my grandfather would speak Italian to him, when we would go visit my grandfather, my father would say, "Pop, speak English."
Yeah.
So he really discouraged it. But in those days, we couldn't care less to speak Italian anyway. You know,
Right,
when you're young.
Because
Now,
he wanted to be American.
he wanted to be
He's an American. He's not an Italian. And you know, like your grandfather, the sacrifice that he made to come to America is substantial. And the same thing with your family, right? All of our grandparents, when they came, it was a big sacrifice to leave their homeland and their families there, and to be American was a big thing. And that's what they wanted to be. They wanted to be Americans. Of course, we're Americans. We're not Italians in any way, but we're Italian in our ancestry, and it's such a beautiful thing to discover
And in
now.
our heart.
And in our heart and our soul,
Right.
Yeah.
we have that beautiful culture of
Mhm.
Italy, and it's just a wonderful thing to get back to. And I guess as you get older, you do that. Now, I know you have made a beautiful trip recently.
Yes.
Why don't you tell me about this trip? This is a trip of a lifetime.
It was. Well, I always had this dream, and I was able to fulfill it, and thanks to Tom. I recently retired, and what I wanted to do was really immerse myself in Rome. I've always loved Rome. We've traveled to Rome and maybe spent some 5-day trips or a 3-day trip or a week here and there, but I knew there was so much more and so many more layers that I wanted to explore. So several days after my retirement party, I got on a plane. Tom joined me for the first week, but after that I spent 2 months in an apartment in Rome and really got to explore the city on foot every single day, every museum, many churches, just enjoying the food, enjoying the culture. So it was definitely a dream of mine, and at the end of the trip, Tom joined me for another couple of weeks, and we left Rome, and then we did a road trip, and that's where we had the opportunity to connect with his family.
So Vivian retired on a Tuesday, and she was on a plane to Rome on Thursday.
Thursday.
So we were on our way.
Wow.
And Vivian's a wonderful planner and plans all kinds of trips. We visited her cousin in Rimini, and but I said, whatever we do, I want to spend at least 2 days, and I want to go to Accadia, the town that my grandfather came from, and maybe by some miracle I could find some relatives. And if we don't, it's okay. I just want to go to the town.
How did you go about discovering your heritage? How did you actually do this?
Well, this is interesting, and again, with the help of Vivian, knowing we're going to Accadia, and again, she's a very good planner, and she's always looking into doing, okay, where are we staying, what are we doing, and really gets things well organized. But anyway, so she Googled Accadia and found the website of the town.
Mm-hmm.
So like any town would have a web, although it's a very small town, so I'm surprised they had it, but nevertheless they had the website, and we're looking at it, and I happened to see when they listed the town, the people who worked as, whether they be the clerks, the secretary, the treasurer, all the people who were involved in the town, I noticed that there was somebody named Sebastiano Papa. So I said, well, it's a small town, he has the same last name, maybe there's some relationship. So I wrote a letter, and it had his email address,
right.
all the email address of the people who worked there.
Right.
So I sent the email, and boom, came back undeliverable.
Yeah.
But we were going to Accadia no matter what, just to visit. And I said, you know what? I went back on that website, and there were about 7 or 8 other people listed, and I sent everybody the same email saying, I'm trying to find Sebastiano, here's the letter I wrote him that I'm coming. Well, 2 days before we're going to go to Accadia, I get an email from Sebastiano Papa. And he says, Ciao, Tom, sorry, I no longer work there because I am ill, and I don't think that I'm a relative that we know of. However, I do know your relatives, and I forward this email. So that was the first one. Then I get an email a few hours later. Ciao, Tom, this is Paolo Papa. Your grandfather and my father were brothers, and I would be happy to meet you and show you around the town. And he was very, very excited. And matter of fact, his wife later told me that when he got that email, he was crying.
Oh,
because
my God.
he had no correspondence since 1978, I think, was the last letter from my grandfather. And my father had passed away when I was young. So my father was not even part of the equation at that time when my grandfather was still corresponding to him. So he was very excited that we were coming, and at that point the emails were flying. Show me pictures, show me this, and it was just constant. It was very, very
Meanwhile, we
exciting.
were traveling. We were on the road, and at this point we were in hotels in Tuscany, we were in Cortona, and as we're doing our road trip, we're corresponding with the wife of his cousin. Her name is Maria Sansano, and she was really instrumental in organizing our meeting. She was absolutely fantastic. So she coordinated the meeting spot, the location, coordinated all of these letters, made a family tree within days, and got time off from her very busy schedule as a physician in order to meet us. So she was really, I think, instrumental
She
in
was
making
wonderful.
this work.
Wow. Well, this is a wonderful thing.
Paolo was probably, or is, about 10 years younger. So he was a kid when Tom's grandfather was writing some of these letters. But he corresponded with many people in the family, and someone collected them all and kept them. So in the letters that we were given when we finally met with Tom's cousin, there were letters to his uncle, there were letters to other cousins. So these were all collected and kept, and obviously they were very important to the family that they made this effort to keep all of these letters over the years.
Your grandfather really was an amazing person, and we saw his beautiful handwriting. What did he do for a living?
According to Tom's cousin Elaine, who was very close with Tom's grandparents, Tom's grandfather was a pattern maker. So from what I understand, if a designer designed a dress, he was able to take that design and translate it into a pattern so that the dress could be manufactured, so it could be cut out. So,
And that's a highly skilled job.
it is.
That's a highly skilled job, and you have to be good
Mathematically.
and also with the drawing,
Yes.
because he's making these patterns so that they can cut this up. So you have some remarkable photographs. Let's go through some of these beautiful photographs.
Well, I put them in a little bit of order of our trip.
Okay.
So again, Maria was, Paolo's wife, was wonderful about setting up the meet. She said, we're going to meet in the best restaurant in Acadia. I think there were only 2 or 3.
Okay.
But
So
nevertheless,
it was an easy choice.
it was
fantastic.
wonderful. But so Vivian had booked a agriturismo, which was 7 miles from the town, because we couldn't really find anything in the town. As it turns out, we found that they do have rooms above the Melograno, but it was after the fact.
Okay.
So we stayed 7 miles, and the GPS said that it will take us about 15 minutes. Okay, fine. The first picture I have is our road. This is before we even get to Acadia. I'm outside navigating to see if our car can get between these potholes without falling in.
Oh my
Because I said to Vivian, if we get stuck here, you're not on Long Island. You're not going to get towed out
Yeah,
for days.
It was desolate.
And this
So-
is 2019, 2018?
Yeah, this was May
This
of
was May of this year.
2019.
Yeah. So what is this interesting
Well,
photograph?
this next picture, this was actually happened to be the following day, but passing by on the road, we happened to see this man here, and he's carrying, it looks like, his groceries on his donkey, and we say, you know what, we could have used a donkey the first night
right,
trying to get to Acadia.
Wow. And this is modern day. This isn't
Yeah,
like
this
from
was-
50 years ago.
Yeah.
So from what you told me before, so Acadia is your ancestral homeland, but this is no longer where Paolo and
Right.
Maria live.
They
live in
They live in a town called Foggia, which is a big city.
the city.
And it's on the east coast of Italy. And it's probably about 45 minutes to an hour away from Acadia. But they are still known in the town.
Right, because they lived there
Yeah, they
most of
lived
their
there.
life.
Okay. Okay. And that is Paolo?
This is Paolo and his wife Maria, and again, we had just met them, and I told them in my my broken Italian,
Yes,
I'll call it,
yeah.
that if you speak slowly, I can probably understand you. And they would speak slowly, and then I would understand them until then they would forget.
Right, and then
then
we're
they
going to their regular
into their
pace.
regular speed.
Yes, which is so fast.
So here we are, and they had put together, and now they're showing me, they put together this binder, which we'll get into in a little bit, of all the letters and
Beautiful,
correspondence.
beautiful.
They had
Look at
pictures of me as a kid.
And you
They
even know.
didn't know who I was.
Wow.
Now, all of these letters, of course, are in Italian because they were sent from Tom's grandfather to the family in Italy. And, luckily we've been studying Italian over the last
Yes.
few years at the Center for Italian Studies at Stony Brook. So, although our Italian I thought was better than it is, we were able to communicate. So
That's wonderful.
thankfully for our classes at the Center for Italian Studies, it got us through.
Yeah.
In addition, we've been able to translate some of the letters,
Wow.
and some of the information in them is really incredible. And one of the best letters, and this one brought tears to both of our eyes, was a letter from Tom's grandfather that was describing the day that Tom was born.
Oh my goodness.
So that was
This-
really incredible.
This letter, I'll just break that one
It
out.
talks about his birth and some other events of the day in 1958.
August 1958. Now this is 21st of August. I was born August 3rd. This letter is very special. This was written a few weeks after I was born. And he's writing a letter to Paolo's parents, and he says here, among other things, vi fo sapere pure che la moglie del mio figlio Emidio, that's my father, la settimana scorsa ha dato alla luce un altro bambino maschio. So he's talking about when I was born, and he says it means he brought into the light a beautiful baby boy. So that it's very special. And these letters that go from 1958 into the 70s actually tell the story of what's going on, because they're corresponding. They don't have Facebook and what's going on. So he said, this is what happened this year, this is what happened this year, this is what happened this year. Going through again, my father had passed away at a young age, and he brings that whole thing up. So this whole thing tells the whole story. And they had all of this. And a matter of fact, they had a picture there's a picture of me. I'm probably about 12 there, my brother, my sister.
Yeah.
So they had all of this sitting there, and they put it all together. She put this book, says here, this
Presented
is my,
this to you
Yes.
my gift
at
to
the
you.
Melograna
At the
restaurant
Melograna.
in Arcadia. Now this is the meal you had. This beautiful
This
meal.
is just part of it, because we didn't leave there until midnight.
Oh my God.
But you can see, and this is the woman who
Mhm.
put the stuff together, who they're very friendly with. And if you look at the kitchen, it looks like just a nice home kitchen. And
This was really the meeting place restaurant in this town. While we were there, there was a group of men that were working on the windmills that are very prevalent in this area. This area is very rural. It's the top of a plateau, so it's very windy, and there's hundreds of power windmills in the area. So while we were there, some of the men that work in the area were there. It was just, it seemed like it was the center of activity of the town.
This is the place to go.
And of
Yes.
course, everybody knew everybody.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And this picture I love. This is just the son, the father, and the mother all working in the kitchen together. It's just, that's the way it is.
The
That's
owners
their
of
life,
this
and
restaurant.
Yeah.
they're happy to do it. It's like as if they're just having guests all day
Yes.
long.
Yeah. Right. Guests, family guests.
So the first day when we got there,
Mhm.
we met at the restaurant, and we sat down, we introduced ourselves because we really didn't know each other. And then we had a beautiful lunch or early dinner together. Then we took a walk through the town of Arcadia, which was really quite special. So I think we have some pictures
Beautiful
of that.
photos of this.
And I had mentioned at one point to you, Dave, that the town, interesting, they had built it on the side of the hill, and at the top of the hill they had the clock tower. So of course it was hundreds of years old, but in 1930 something there was a bigger earthquake than others that devastated the town. So at that point, because it was it basically was uninhabitable at that point, they just decided to build the town down the other side of the hill. So they left all of that area still intact, and now it's they want to preserve it,
Right.
but they just left it, and then they built the town of Arcadia as we know it today. So all the ruins are still there, and
This is part of the ruins.
and this particular part of the ruins is where my great-grandmother was born.
Wow.
So this is the house that my great-grandmother was born. And you can see this is actually the almost like the window into the new into the older area,
Like the
and that's the
gateway.
house right there. You can see it right
And a
there.
beautiful wood turquoise door with a beautiful patina of
But
paint
it's
on it.
uninhabited though, right?
Right, that area is, it's all beautiful stone buildings, but it's dangerous to live in because
Yeah.
it is an earthquake zone,
Right.
and now the buildings are they're unheated, and there's no water and so forth. I think in one of the buildings is a restaurant, but the rest of it is basically ruins. And they do use them for some of the cultural activities in the town, so I know they have concerts among them. Now that we know the town, we've been reading up on their website, some of the activities that they have, and they do quite a bit.
And what is this for?
Now the following day, we met them again.
Yes.
We had lunch at the Melagrana, and then they took us all around the town. So here they took us into the municipal building, and this was where I emailed everybody.
Yes.
So all the people who were working knew us, were waiting for us from the email because they actually corresponded. So one of the women who was working there, because they all got the email, forwarded over to Sebastiano, who used to work there, but as I mentioned, he was ill, and it came from there. So they knew that we would be coming, and they were so wonderful. They showed us all the records, birth records,
these, how old
marriage
these are.
records. This book that we're looking in, the back of it had 1800s. This book was
Wow.
in the,
So
from the 1800s.
you were able to find your father in there? Or your grandfather?
My grandfather,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
They had
And all his
they pulled
family.
out all the papers. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
that's one of the
Wow.
papers there.
Jeez.
Then they took us to the cemetery
Wow.
where my great grandmother's family was, and then this is my grandfather's brother, or Paolo's father and,
Right.
and mother. So they took us all through that area. This was the schoolhouse that my grandfather went to when he was a boy.
Wow.
Now it's abandoned, but he went to this school right
Boy,
here.
you certainly learned how to write well.
Yeah.
Boy, that's something. That's beautiful. And now this next beautiful photo. What is this?
Well, this picture, because again, Sebastiano was instrumental in hooking us all up, and of course, him and his family wanted to meet us also, and they actually live in Arcadia. They're
Right.
all Papas, and they made arrangements to meet us at another place, and so we'll just have some coffee together, and so we spent some time with them, and then they hijacked us and took us to their house. And then they showed us a beautiful scenery. The backyard was just, the view was just breathtaking and spectacular.
Wow.
And he says,
So-
if we don't know if we're cousins for sure, he goes, but as far as we're concerned, this was actually Vincenzo, his brother. As far as we're concerned, you're our cousins. Next time you stay with us for a month, you stay at my house.
Oh my God. And Vivian, you wanted to introduce yourself.
Well, I was going to say, all of the people in this picture have the last name Papa,
Wow.
although they're not.
Which one is Sebastiano?
This one is
That's
Sebastiano.
Sebastiano.
Yes.
And this is his brother Vincenzo.
Right.
And
His sister,
His sister. And,
and
of course
then
that's
their
Paolo.
sons,
Right.
and there's Paolo.
Yeah.
But and their children came from school to meet us.
Oh,
They
how
were in high
nice.
school, so we met everyone.
Now this is a workshop of some sort.
Right. They also took me. This was as you're walking across. Again, everybody knows everybody because it's such a small town. So this was his friend, and his friend had a wood shop. Now, in our discussions the day before, I was telling them that prior to my business that I'm in now, I used to be a woodworker, and I would do furniture and all. So they made it a point to bring me to their friend's furniture shop. And this was it. So he was showing us his furniture that he was making and his tools, and it was just
Fascinating.
very, 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 very interesting and exciting. And I tell you, it was such an experience.
Well, I want to thank you both for this wonderful half hour of beautiful, beautiful photos and beautiful history. Thank you, Tom, so much.
Oh,
Thank you much.
oh,
Thank
thank
you,
you, Dave.
Vivian.
Dave, thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.